Welcome. Thanks for joining us and for taking time to learn more about maximizing your consistency, quality, and productivity. Now, let's begin to learn how to cut the passes, cut the pressure, and cut the ink cost with Manny. Manny is the first and only printing blade ever designed and manufactured exclusively for manual t-shirt printing applications. Manny is most unique in that he allows the operator to lock their wrist, so the effort required to print comes from the upper body. With Manny, the operator uses less pressure per pass, makes fewer passes per color, and still achieves optimal coverage. The secret to Manny's success lies in the ortho, or straight line hinge, on the front side and the bevel on the back side of the blade. The hinge gives Manny dual volume control. Please allow me to explain. The front edge of Manny is square and used to print the softest hand, while the back edge of Manny is beveled and it prints maximum coverage. Manny is ideal for both push printing, which is used by about half the printers, and pull printing, which is preferred by about 1/3 of the printers. Regardless of push, pull, or switch hit, Manny outperforms all other contenders. Manny gives you both minimum deposit or maximum coverage in one blade. The combination of hinge and bevel permit operator ease over the longest range of mesh counts. The square edge on the front of the blade delivers lower ink volumes for the softest hand, and it's typically used on mesh counts from 156 to 330. Typical applications for the square edge include halftones, woven fabrics, fleece, or top-quality jersey knits. The beveled edge on the back side of Manny delivers greater ink volumes for maximum coverage. The beveled edge is typically used on mesh counts from 63 to 156. Typical applications include short staple length, low fabric mass t-shirts, underbase images, and highlight whites on finer mesh counts. You'll see our Blue Jay icon in the image above. This is the shape of the ideal squeegee, just like Manny. You see, Manny doesn't buckle. He fits to the mesh, so you can use less pressure, fewer passes, and get flaw-free images. Buckling causes image stretch, blurring, garment show-through, poor mat down, and surface roughness. If any of your garments ever look like this, it's time you upgraded to Manny. Now it's time to insert Manny into the holder and then inspect for proper seating. Manny fits in all standard holders which accept a 3/8 inch by 2 inch blade. However, he should never extend beyond the length of the holder, nor is Manny designed to print over the edges of platen. These are the only two restrictions. Manny is made to print without flaws. To ensure this is the case, be certain he's inserted completely into the flat part of the holder. Once you insert Manny, sight along the length of the blade as you would sight down the bore of a rifle, and look for the presence of any waves or scallops on the printing edges. If the edge is irregular, remove Manny from the holder and check the holder for any debris, any foreign material that might prevent proper seating. Once that's complete, reinsert Manny in the clean holder. Do not over-tighten the bolts, and then make a final inspection. Then, to be sure you have a true print edge, lay Manny on a flat surface as shown, and rock him back and forth as though you were changing the print angle. Watch for light leaks between the edges of the blade and the flat surface. If there are no light leaks present, you're ready to go to press. Should you have a problem, don't forget, Manny is imprinted with a 9-digit serial number for complete traceability. Manny has two modes, to flood or to fill the mesh. First is float mode, to deliver a minimum volume of ink. The second is preload, to fill the cells of the mesh with the maximum ink volume. Float is preferable for most water-based applications, to print the finest detail, and for overprint colors. In fact, you may consider skipping a flood stroke periodically if you incur wet artifacts. For the highest volume or the maximum penetration on absorbent surfaces, for underbase, opaque colors, and low mass garments, we'll want to preload the mesh before the print stroke. However, never preload the ink for an overprint color. Manny is built so that you can push or pull with either the square or the beveled edge. Approximately 50% of the printers out there push the blade. Less than 30% pull the blade. The balance, maybe about 25%, switch hit. Sometimes they push, sometimes they pull. Fortunately, Manny works well in both modes, and either way, Manny requires less pressure and fewer passes on either edge. As a guideline, the beveled edge is best suited from 63 to 156 mesh for high coverage on relatively coarser mesh counts. The square edge best fits on a 156 to a 330 mesh. It's intended for higher resolution and a softer hand. Of course, there are always going to be exceptions. For example, a low fabric mesh, short, stable black garment that needs a white, single color halftone. But basically, if the mesh is coarser, use the beveled edge. If the mesh is finer, use the square edge. The question is, straight line or smile? CPR blades offer a choice when you're printing close to the edge of the frame or oversized images. T-shirt printing, according to the blade, is like jumping on a trampoline. If you've ever used a trampoline, you know, jump in the center, you'll have a blast. Jump at the edges, you'll twist an ankle. The sweet spot of a trampoline or a screen is the area nearest the center, where the resistance of the screen mesh to the blade is constant, like the center of the trampoline. Outside the sweet spot, the resistance of the mesh to the blade increases as we approach the edge of the frame. This is similar to jumping at the edge of the trampoline. Manny has an orthogonal or straight line hinge because Manny's meant to print in the sweet spot of the screen only. However, when the need arises to print closer to the edge, that is a blade longer than, say, 14 inches on a 2331 frame, we recommend that you use Dr. J. Dr. J does everything that Manny can do, but it does it closer to the inside edges of the frame. Manny fits and prints all screen meshes. He'll run the gamut of printed garments, anything from athletic numbers to halftones. For numerals on coarse meshes, they're best served with a square edge fill, followed by a beveled edge print stroke. Opaque inks, including white ink, are best printed through high volume meshes, using a square edge fill and a bevel to print. The college bookstore look can range from a coarse to a finer mesh, so Manny offers a choice. If the deposit is too heavy, float the flood stroke and print with Manny's square edge. If the deposit is too light, use a preload flood with the square edge and a quick print stroke with Manny's beveled edge. For soft hand penetration on finer meshes, keep the angle of Manny vertical. Apply firm pressure with a quick stroke. For the highest resolution halftones, process colors and gradients, float or skip the flood stroke and print with the square edge only. Diagnostics with Manny is very simple, but using an old-fashioned blade to deliver a precise quantity of ink while maintaining registration is what consumes most of our setup time. With respect to ink deposit, there are only three possibilities: perfect, lean, or rich. A perfect image has no artifacts, no interruptions in the visual image. The image is lean and exhibits dry artifacts. These are most common with underbases and colors printed directly on the garment. Some examples include image stretch, roughness, show-through, sawtooth, and pinholes. The third possibility is rich. These are wet artifacts, most common with overprint colors. Examples of wet artifacts include image spread, orange peel, blurring, and modeling. Fortunately for us, wet and dry artifacts are mutually exclusive. The two cannot coexist in space-time. If you have wet, you can't have dry in the same space. If you have dry, you can't have wet in the same space. So if you spot dry artifacts, most likely with underbases, put Manny in a preload mode to fill the mesh before the print stroke. Use the beveled edge of Manny to increase the ink volume. Increase the stroke speed first and inspect the print. If that's not enough, increase the off contact in 25% increments. Or, if you spot wet artifacts, these are most likely with overprint colors, put Manny in a float mode or even skip a flood stroke if possible. Be sure that you're using Manny's square edge. If that's still not enough, reduce Manny's angle of attack. Or finally, increase the off contact distance in 25% increments. This troubleshooting section is for the blade portion of the printing process only. The tables do not deal with the effectiveness of mesh, stencil, ink type, or color. We've listed the solutions to each problem from the simplest to the more complex in order to minimize your downtime on press. Our recommendations will work very well with Manny, Smilin' Jack, and Dr. J, but if they work at all, they're likely to be hit and miss with old-fashioned blades, so please be careful. The problems and solutions follow. 1. Opacity. For opacity, print at top speed, which gives a superior matte down. This is the first and simplest step, just by making a quicker print stroke. If speed's not enough, use a preload on the flood stroke, and then make sure you're printing with the beveled edge. If the opacity is still insufficient, you might need to use added passes for this press run. But before the next run, make sure you've optimized your ink and mesh. 2. Matte down. For matte down, speed is the best solution, but also make sure that you're using a minimum angle of attack. If those two are not sufficient, increase the off-contact gap in 25% increments. 3. Penetration. For penetration, minimize the blade angle. Be sure you're using the square edge, medium or moderate pressure, and a quick print stroke. If you still need more penetration, increase the off-contact gap in 25% increments. 4. Image stretch. Image stretch is most often due to blade buckling, and Manny does not need to buckle. If you're applying enough angle and pressure that Manny's buckling, please reduce the angle and the pressure. If you're still getting image stretch, increase the off-contact gap in 25% increments. 5. Wet artifacts indicate an excessive amount of ink, and these are more likely with overprint colors that are printed on a flashed underbase. Worst case scenario may be transparent royal blue on a flashed white underbase. Examples are image spread, blurring, dot gain, or filling in of spaces. The first step to eliminate wet artifacts, make sure you're using the square edge of the blade, minimize the angle, and then minimize the pressure. If wet artifacts remain, increase the off-contact gap in 25% increments. Number 6, dry artifacts. These indicate insufficient ink volume and are more likely on a color which is printed directly on the garment. Worst case scenario for dry artifacts may be a white underbase printed on a short staple, low fabric mass, dark colored garment. Examples are image stretch, roughness, texture, and modeling or pinholes. Preload the mesh on the flood stroke and use the beveled edge to print to eliminate dry artifacts. If they remain, increase the off-contact gap in 25% increments. 7. Roughness. If the printed image is rough, be certain to preload the flood stroke and use the beveled edge. Minimize the angle and pressure and then increase the stroke speed. If the roughness remains, increase the off-contact gap in 25% increments. 8. Blotchiness. If blotchiness occurs, it's most often due to an excessive volume of an overprint color. If you push the blade, reduce the pressure first, and then if need be, decrease the angle. If you pull the blade, decrease the angle first, and then if need be, reduce the pressure. The design, formulation, and engineering of Manny, exclusively for the manual t-shirt printer, involved a number of steps. Manny is an ester-based MDI polyurethane blade. This gives him maximum life and maximum performance on press. He's made at 75 Shore A hardness. This gives Manny chemical and abrasion resistance. The hinge on Manny is a straight line or orthogonal hinge. This allows him to print up to a 14-inch blade on a 23/31 frame. Manny's 1.0 hinge depth allows the square edge to fit finer meshes from 156 to 330, and the beveled edge to fit coarser meshes from 63 to 156, both with minimal pressure. Manny is shaped like the iconical blue jay that you'll see in the upper right-hand corner of the slide, so he never needs to buckle. Manny's edges are precision cut to 50 microns. The square edge on the hinge side delivers the least ink volume for a soft hand, halftones, and maximum penetration. The height of the hinge gives Manny the longest life and allows him to fit the widest range of mesh counts, from 63 to 330 mesh. Manny comes in rolls up to 12 feet in length or standard sizes, cut to 12-inch and 14-inch in a holder of choice. Finally, Manny has a serial number every 18 inches for complete traceability. The glossary is intended to clarify the use of terms and applications used in this presentation for Manny only. Thank you for taking time to review this training session. If you'd like a copy of this presentation in either PowerPoint show or PDF format, just let us know. Should you have any other questions, please contact customer service at Ryonet by dialing 800-314-6390.